Hi, I'm Dave Hilowitz. So as promised, this is my video of Ableton Live audio editing tips. A few weeks ago, I did one that was more about MIDI editing. So yeah, this one's gonna focus more on the audio side of things. Before I can get started, of course, I need some audio to work with. So I'm gonna record a little bit of synth. I'm gonna use that Moog synth that I hardly ever use. It's kind of a shame. And I'm gonna do an intentionally sloppy job. I'm not gonna use a metronome. I'm gonna keep the timing a little bit loose and just kind of hopefully come up with something that we can turn into a track. Okay, I'm back. I've got some audio, but I don't have any sense of what tempo I played it at, and there are a ton of timing issues, which is a pretty common problem to have. As we know, Ableton displays every piece of audio, both up here on the timeline and down here in the little clip view. But the two aren't exactly the same. For example, if I drag this to be much smaller, the window here still displays all of the audio, even though only a small portion of the audio is actually showing up in our actual timeline. By default, new clips have warp turned on, which means that if I change the tempo of the session, it's going to actually speed up the audio. Warp also allows us to play with the timing of the clip, and we do that by double-clicking on these little spots, these little triangles, and they turn into drag handles, and then we can kind of just slowly move the timing of our audio. So this is how we fix the timing. Now, the goal when you're doing this is to find the downbeats. The downbeats are the notes that come right at the start of a musical measure. Of course, in this case, we've got an arpeggiation and it's super easy. I was playing in 4/4. I did have 4 beats per measure, so it's pretty easy to figure out what the timing should be. Okay, so now we fixed the timing, but you'll notice that the audio is playing back weirdly fast. We've aligned it to the grid, and it's playing back at the project tempo, which I've set right now to 182 BPM completely arbitrarily. Ideally, we would want to have our project tempo match the tempo of whatever it is that we played. We want to figure out the tempo of what it is that I played. Even though I played it kind of out of rhythm, I did a bad job intentionally, we still want to find basically what the appropriate rhythm would be. So if we go down here, we can see that there's a BPM, and it's 95 BPM. And if I use that, it's probably going to be fine. At the same time, if I advance through my clip here, it's 100 BPM. That's a pretty big difference, a 5 BPM difference. Go to the next one, 102. Next one's 100. Next one's 111. So I did such a bad job, intentionally of course, but I did such a bad job that it's very, very hard to use any of these as an accurate gauge of what the tempo actually should be. So what we need to do is we need to figure out the average tempo for the clip. So the way we do that is we actually undo some of the hard work we just did. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete a bunch of these. And what that does is it actually causes us to be given the average across that entire chunk of time. So okay, I think we have enough here. So the average for this chunk of time is 103.76. Let's just use that. Actually, I'm going to move it up to 104. So before I set the BPM, I'm actually going to undo everything I just did because I actually want those fixes. Now I'm going to set this to 104. Okay, there's a secondary problem here, which is there's some audio artifacts. And the reason is that as it fixes the timing of my audio clip, it's stretching out some of the beats and it's shrinking other beats. And you can hear it, it's audible. Down here, there is something called warp mode. Basically, what's happening under the hood with warp is when it doesn't have enough audio, it's kind of like inventing new audio using an algorithm. And when it has too much, it's shrinking it also using a different algorithm. Warp mode allows us to choose different options. I prefer Complex Pro, but yeah, basically you can tinker with them and improve your sound quality substantially. Yeah, that sounds just like the original. Pretty good. By the way, if we, for some reason, actually like the tempo of our recorded work, like say we're trying to sync up an entire track to a performance, and the performance has like, you know, musical timing fluctuations, not just like some idiot hitting on the keyboard the way I was, you can do this thing here where you can click follow, and now the entire track is going to use this one clip and the timing of this one clip as the basis for its tempo. So for example, if you look down here, I'm going to open up this and we're going to switch this so that we can see the tempo. It's applied tempo variations to this entire range of time. So I'm going to go right to the start, and we're going to see that it's 95, it's 102, it's just kind of jumping around. And if I were to, like, I don't know, pull in some random clip, and you're going to hear the fluctuation. Especially noticeable towards the end where I kind of really lost the plot. Okay, I'm going to undo all of this so that we're just dealing with that one loop and we don't have this random clip hanging out. And also we want to have a fixed tempo, of course. So now we have this nice, clean arpeggio. We have a bunch of options. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of copy this clip over towards the end of my timeline. And I generally have like an area off to the right that's kind of like the scrap yard. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to consolidate this. And what Consolidate does is it creates a new audio file based on all of the changes that you've made to that particular audio file. So if you've messed with the timing, you messed with the pitch, basically any of the things that you may have done using the clip view stuff or any of the modulations, all of that is going to get burned into the new audio file. It's sort of like a destructive edit, although it doesn't destroy anything about the old file. The old file is, yeah, still right here. So I've got a nice new one with all these timing changes in it, and I don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to mess up one of the warp markers or something like that. Another thing to watch out for is when you do consolidate, whatever tempo you have your timeline at, that's the tempo that it's going to use for making that new wave file. So you want to make sure that you're working at a tempo that you ultimately want to end up in. Another great use for the consolidate command is you can actually use it to glue together pieces of audio. Like, let's say that I decided that I wanted to take this and we're going to zoom in a little bit and I wanted to make an alternate version that had a bunch of the same note being repeated like that. I could take this, right click, consolidate, and now I've got a whole new clip with that timing preserved. One of the challenges, of course, with electronic music is you need to find ways to keep your track interesting. You can apply a ton of different effects. You can have the effects coming in, going out. One thing I also like to do is I like to sometimes use Ableton's pitch controls to create a shadow copy of a clip. So, for example, we've got our original pattern here. I'm going to paste it again here. We can get rid of this. And I'm just going to take this and pitch it up. And what I'm doing here is I'm clicking on pitch and I'm holding shift and then pressing the up arrow. In this case, I'm just going to pitch it up and add a ton of reverb and use only the wet signal. Okay, I love it. It's perfect. So I'm just going to go to export audio, and I'm going to export just that second Moog track, and I'm going to render it as a loop. Sounds amazing. Another cool trick is you can take audio like this and you can get Ableton to actually transcribe the notes and use it to trigger any MIDI instrument. For example, let's say that I were to load up my own decent sampler. Now that I've got a MIDI track, and now that the MIDI track actually has an instrument on it, I can drag this audio right here, and you can see that little note icon appears, and I let go, and it pops up this box that basically asks me how it should interpret that audio file. Does it have multiple notes playing at the same time? Does it have drum content? In this case, we only have one note playing at a single time, so it's definitely melodic. Let's listen to this soloed. Works pretty well. So for the time being, I'm going to just stick with that original take that we had, and I'm just going to kind of silence the other tracks. We can get rid of this. We no longer need it. Okay, next let's record another track. This time I'm going to go super analog. I'm going to record some viola. Okay, so I just did some viola takes. Basically, I put this on loop for way too long, and I just recorded and recorded. And I haven't played the viola in like a few days, so I'm a little bit pitchy. So yeah, a lot of editing needs to be done. Which brings us to the take editor, which was added in Ableton Live 11, and it is so essential. Like, it's become like just a central part of my workflow at this point. So here we've got the 2 viola tracks that I recorded, and you wouldn't know it, but there's actually a lot of audio here. Like, it looks like it's just, what, 9 bars, something like that. But if you look in the clip editor, it's massively long, and I kind of workshopped an idea for the first half, and then after a while I started workshopping an idea for the second half. So yeah, here's what it sounds like. Okay, so that's a general idea. It's obviously there are a lot of pitch issues in addition to some performance stuff. So let's drill down into the first of these. So I'm going to mute this. I'm going to mute this piano track. We've just got the mode going up at the top here. And then down here, we've got this 1 viola. So to use the take editor, all we have to do is right click on this and do show take lanes. And it's going to pop up this. And we can see I got a lot of takes. You know, in general, it's good to have 4, 5, 6 takes, that, you know, not too many, because if you have a ton like this, it's going to be really hard to decide between your takes. You're not going to remember what you played in take 3, or that take, 27 is better than take 4 or something like that. So the important thing to know about this is that highlighting is very important. So you can see up here, we've got this vibrant purple, this very noticeable highlighted purple, and down here, we've also got it highlighted. And that means that what's actually playing in your song is this viola 1-3, this third lane. If I wanted, for example, to play this one instead, I would click on this, select it, and then hit the return key or the enter key. You can see what's up here changed. And if I decided I liked, from here on out in this take, I would just do a split. And the way I do splits is either right click and do split, or do Command or Control E. Very, very helpful editing command. Choose the part that I want and then hit enter. You'll notice that immediately this part became unhighlighted and this part became highlighted. If I then go into this clip that's actually part of our song, the one at the top, and do some modification, any modification at all in the clip view, it's going to unhighlight this. Watch this. See how it unhighlighted it? And the reason that's happening is we have now diverged from this pool of takes. There is no take down here that matches what's up in our song actually. If I want to make a change down here, I've now maybe futzed with the timing, done something, let's say I do something like that and I prefer it. I then need to reselect that clip and hit enter, and it will propagate the change that I just made up here. So that's super important to know. It's not the way other take systems necessarily work, but yeah, that's how it works in Ableton. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically going to listen to all of my first halves, figure out which one sounds the best. Obviously, the longer the chunk I can get, the better. I'd way rather have an entire first half and then an entire second half and not have to do so much pasting. So what I would say about that is that was great, except there was a note here that was completely out of pitch. There it is. Okay, I'm going to do some edits on this clip. Audio editing in Ableton is pretty straightforward. The main thing is you select audio by clicking on the lower half of these clips. If you click the top half, it selects the entire clip. But if you click the lower part, it lets you choose a chunk. Then you can, copy and paste using, Control C, Control V. You can hit Control D and it duplicates whatever you had like that. Another very useful command is the split, which I already mentioned. You right click here, you do split, and from that point on, you can move stuff around. It's very helpful when you're trying to work with a specific note. Like for example, we had said that this first take is good except for one note. So in theory, I don't think it's actually gonna work. I could just excise. That's the bad note. Another useful thing to know is there are these fade drag handles. If you zoom in, you can see the way that it transitions from one clip to another. So if I do this, for example, you get a much more gradual fade. I'm going to do that again over here. Sounds weird. A couple other editing tools that are definitely worth knowing when you're doing something like this. Let's say you have a note like this and you decide you want this note to be way longer. If I just take this and I drag to the right, what's actually going to happen is it's going to roll out more of the audio. It's going to show more of the audio that's in that file. If you want to stretch the note, however, you can actually hold down Shift, and instead of expanding the clip to show more of the audio from behind the scenes, it's actually just going to stretch what you have. So actually a nice note. I'm going to actually save that for later. Another super useful editing tool is if you want to actually change the specific audio that a certain clip points to, you can just hold down Option and Shift, or I think it's Control and Shift on Windows. And what will actually happen is it will actually move the audio within the clip. So let's say that you want this note to start sooner. You just drag it to the left, and then now it's starting much sooner because we've moved where the audio is within that clip. So super useful. So yeah, now I'm going to do a bunch of edits, and I'm not going to expose you to the misery of me going through 27 takes of viola just to get the like 2 that are like halfway passable. I will meet you back here when I'm done with this extremely boring editing work. Now that I've got my takes sounding the way I want them, finally, I'm going to copy these to another part of the file just for backup purposes, and then I'm going to consolidate them so that we can stop thinking about takes, stop thinking about editing, and just get back into the business of building a cool track. So let's hear what this sounds like. Okay, it's good enough for now. So another cool Live 11 feature is track linking. This is only available in Standard and Suite. It's very cool. It allows you to do edits to multiple tracks at the same time. So let's say that I wanted to do edits on these 2 viola tracks at the same time. Right click here and do link tracks. And you can see now there's like a little chain link thing. And now any edit that I do to this track is going to get propagated down to that track below. And probably the most obvious use for this is drum tracks, where you might have like 4 or 8 microphones all on one drum kit. If you're editing live drums, you want to make sure that they all stay in rhythm. You don't want to do any edit to just one track because otherwise you'll get these horrible phasing issues. That's kind of like the perfect use case for this. But there are a lot of other cases that also make sense. If you've got 4 versions of a synth line, for example, and 3 of them have a bunch of effects, one of them is the dry version, you're going to want to do all of your edits at the same time to all of them. And then you can turn the track linking off and do more edits. So for example, if I select these and decide that I want to do that, or let's say I wanted to like use that audio slipping, I could slip the whole thing forward like that. Very, very powerful. Okay, let's add something rhythmic to this. Obviously, I could just pull in some drum loops or something like that. I want to kind of try to roll my own using audio editing. So I'm going to actually grab one of these viola notes and we can use it as the basis for, I don't know, some kind of organic loop or something like that. Bring it down into its own track down here. And I'm going to pitch it down like super far down, like 36. And I'm also going to stretch it out using the stretch tool. So I'm holding down Shift and I'm just dragging it out so it's much longer than it was before. Hear what that sounds like. So now I'm going to make sure that I'm in beats mode. The warp modes, as we discussed earlier, determine the algorithm for filling in gaps in audio. The beats mode is the most basic, and the way that it works is it tries to find the starts of notes, and then it plays everything back in rhythm, of course, and if it needs to do gap filling, what it does is it plays the note, and then it plays the note in reverse, and then it plays it again, and basically uses little chunks to kind of fill up the gap. In this case, we've pitched the thing way down, and we want to just exploit some of that behavior to make a cool rhythmic effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to first switch this so that instead of being keyed to transients, which is the default, we're actually going to have it do it at a regular interval. It's not going to detect any notes in one long sustained note anyway. So by default, it's set to sound like this, and we're going to listen to it soloed. I'm actually going to pitch it up a little bit just so that we can hear what it's doing. So already we can hear that kind of cool rhythmic sound. I want to use this as like a sub bass, so I'm actually going to bring it down. But before I do, I'm going to shorten those little chunks. This is basically the length of the chunks. So listen. That seems pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to pitch it back down, -36, and we're going to listen to it with. Okay, it's the wrong note, but that's generally the range that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to do Consolidate. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix the timing because for some reason it's kind of like out of timing a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to switch it to complex. We're basically just going to keep tinkering with it until it matches the chords that we have in this. Sounding pretty nice. So this morning it's pouring in Philadelphia. So I recorded some of the rain basically hitting my air conditioning unit, which makes these loud popping sound. And I'm going to try to use that as a drum rack. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open this up, go here, go to the clip and transposition. This allows me to actually modify the pitch data in real time. And I'm just going to pitch it all the way down, maybe all the way back up again. And I'm going to right click this and I'm going to consolidate it. And now I've got this nice, seemingly useless audio file that has all of those tempo changes burned into it. If you have something like this, a little bit of audio that you want to turn into a drum beat and you want to use the drum rack, you can actually right click it and do slice to new MIDI track. And it's going to pop up this little window that asks you some questions. Basically, what kind of algorithm do you want to use to slice up your audio? Now, obviously, this was meant for like grooves and drum loops and things like that. It's not necessarily meant for rain samples or whatever this is. We could try transients and see what happens. I'm going to hit OK. And what's going to happen is it's actually going to create a new track. So what it's done is it's created pads on the drum rack. And each one of those pads corresponds to a little chunk of the audio file. If I double click here and zoom out, you can see this is that first section. This is going to work better than I thought. I'm going to right click here and do insert empty MIDI clip. Turn this on, this all important little button here that allows us to actually hear what we're actually doing. Another important thing about the drum rack is by default, what it does is it actually loops those little chunks. So if I do like what I just did and play a note, it's actually going to loop it. If you don't want it to do that, you can go into any one of these and turn it into a one shot. For example, I could turn this into one shot. I'm going to do that for a few of them. That's a good snare. Okay, we're getting somewhere. And just like that, we've made ourselves a little track. Okay, hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you could hit like. And if you haven't done so already, yeah, now's a great time to subscribe. I've got a bunch of videos on the way. So yeah, see you soon.